Welcome to quick tip number 55. Today's quick tip is as follows. Practice eighth note lead-ins into target notes of melodies. Anticipating target notes of melodies with eighth notes is a great tool for melodic variation when you're putting together breaks on bluegrass songs, for example. It adds momentum to the beginnings of your breaks and provides some really good melodic and rhythmic glue within the break to keep the tune chugging along. Eighth note lead-ins. I want to anticipate these target notes with some eighth notes before to give it momentum. So if you've seen my videos on, for example, constructing bass runs, it's a very similar formula. We take direction, are we approaching the target note from above or below? Duration, how long are we going to spend to get to that target note? And then we have note choice. Which notes are we going to use to do these melodic lead-ins? I want to propose 4 different options for note choice. 1, the major scale of the key that the tune is in. 2, a pentatonic scale. 3, the chromatic scale, every note available to us in the Western scale. And lastly, chord tones. For example, if we're leading to the note G, that's a G chord, we could precede that with notes from a G chord. As with many other quick tips, we begin by skeletalizing an example tune. I thought a good tune to do would be Stanley Brothers' Highway of Regret. The break is on the chorus, so let's take a listen to the chorus.
Ain't talking, just walking down this highway of regret. Heart burning, still yearning for the best girl this boy ever met.
Step 1 is to try and figure out exactly what the lead vocal is doing. So it goes like this: 1, 2, 3. Ain't talking, just walking. Okay, good. Now remember from quick tip number 1, to skeletalize a break, what do? I generally take out pickup notes, basically by just playing it in quarter notes, half notes, or in this case, whole notes, like 1 note per bar type of thing. Now the funny thing about this chorus melody is that the beat 1s, what you would normally think are the target places, are actually passing tones that eventually land on the target on beat 2. So for example, ain't walking. The syllable wa is on beat 1, and the note is an A, which is a passing tone going to the target note G, which ends up landing on beat 2. So it's a little bit confusing. But here's what I came up with for a skeletal distilled version of the melody that we can work with to practice eighth note lead-ins. 1, 2, 3, 4. Talking, just talking on this highway of regret. Hearts yearning, still burning for the girl. You really get a sense of the exact shape of the tune without necessarily having to deliver every single piece of information. Good. If we put some melodic lead-ins into that, it'll actually become a pretty juicy field for nice creative breaks. So let's begin with the very first one. The first target note is a G. And let's just start constructing it kind of intuitively. I want to approach this first target note G 6 notes below. And let's pick the pentatonic scale. So I'm going to use G pentatonic, which is the notes G, A, B, D, E. At some point soon, I'll make a nice quick tip on pentatonic scales. But right now, I'm just going to assume that you have a general idea of what that could mean. So I want to approach this note G with a pentatonic scale below for 6 notes. So what do? I start counting 6 notes below in the pentatonic scale. G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to start a 6-note pentatonic lead-in, leading to an open G, I would start on an open E. Because it's 6 eighth notes, I would start on beat 2 of the preceding bar. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Nice. So that could be the intro to my break. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Excellent. Our next target note is a C. still yearning. Let's approach that 6 notes below using the pentatonic scale. Now you'll notice, if we were to use the G pentatonic scale, because we're in the key of G, C is not contained in that, but we could try and see what happens there. From the first note below a C, that's part of G pentatonic, we begin counting 6 notes below pentatonically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to lead to the melody note, the target note C, with a pentatonic lead-in 6 notes below, we would start on a B. So if I put the first and second lead-ins together, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Interesting. Before we move on, I do want to propose one alternative. Because we're leading to a C that's on a C chord, we could also use, for our note choices, the C pentatonic scale to lead to it. Don't question too much why, but trust me, it is an option that would work. So what would we do there? C pentatonic below 6 notes. We'd start counting from the first note below C in C pentatonic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we were to approach that note C from 6 notes below using the C pentatonic and not the G pentatonic, we'd start the C pentatonic on an A note. Listen to the difference when I put those two together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now with the C pentatonic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's a very subtle difference, and now you, as the interpreter, have to make that choice. Let's say for the third target note, we won't do a lead-in, just to keep it a little varied and not so monotonous. For the fourth target note, let's use the same lead-in we used for the first target note because they're the same note, an open G. For the last target note of the first half of the tune, let's not do a lead-in. Now we move to the second half of the tune. I want to approach that open G in the second half with 4 notes from below, combining the major scale and the chromatic scale. So I'm just kind of picking at random, but the general thing that was really guiding my decisions is I want to hear that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, da 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 da. So that da 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 da, I need to figure out what I'm doing. I've determined I'm approaching it from below, and I'm going to use the major scale and the chromatic scale. So I made the choice of doing D, E, F, F sharp, landing on the G. For the next target note, the C, I'm going to approach that 4 notes from above chromatically. For the third target note of the second half, the D, I'm not going to do a lead-in. And now to approach the B target note, the third to last note of the core melody, I want to approach 3 notes from above using chord tones. So I'm on a G chord. So the chord tones I would use would be the chord tones from the chord G. I go 3 notes above this note, the B, up the chord, so I'm back to a B, and that would be the cascading structure that I go down to the B with. The next note, A, so I'm going to lead into that A with the chord tones from the chord D above. So A, I go up 3 chord tones from that A. There's the beginning of my melodic lead-in, and it'll cascade down to the target note. And then to land on the very last note of the melody, let's do a melodic lead-in, 3 notes from below using the pentatonic scale. So again, what do? There's my target note. I'm going to go 3 notes pentatonically below. 1, 2, 3. It's going to start on my B. So here's what we've put together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. its its own, this concept might seem a little dry and academic. But when you start combining it with a few of the other approaches we've talked about in quick tips, like for example, harmonizing melodies with triads, inserting cross-picking into your breaks, you start having lots of options for melodic variation, for playing solos on your favorite songs. So remember the process. We learn the melody of the break exactly as it was delivered by, for example, the vocals. We boil it down into a very distilled target note melody. And then we start making creative choices and create some breaks by determining eighth note lead-ins with direction, duration, and note choice. These are all nice things to think about, not only when you're composing and improvising your own breaks, but also when you're learning other people's breaks. Go and check out how Kenny Baker starts his solos. What does he use for note choice when he's leading up to the target note D of I'm on my way back to the old home? What does Sam Bush do when he's leading to the second half of Will You Be Loving Another Man on Tony Rice's Plays and Sings Bluegrass? Having this lens to look at it through, namely melodic lead-ins and these parameters to work with, you can really start to understand how other people are approaching it in a very disciplined and structured way. Thanks so much for being a patron, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.